Welcome to The Point with Mick Rich. What a week it's been going on. It's shocking to me, but I first want to start off with about last week's show. I wanted to just touch base, and one of the things that I talked about in there was and it always amazed people when I talk to them about how physics really plays in with what goes on our personal lives, the political lives, and the prime example is oscillation. And what I talked about was Galloping Gertie, a bridge up into Tacoma Narrows. And what was really surprising about Galloping Gertie is that it was built in the 1940s. In 1940, it was the fifth or probably the second longest suspension bridge in the nation at that time. Now it's the fifth longest. But it was built and it came down. And it came down in 40-mile-an-hour winds. Now, you can all imagine we get 40-mile-an-hour winds very easily here. But we're talking about gusts. And what the gusts did was, those gusts came through and that bridge kept getting crazier and crazier. And what was happening, and down it came down. And what I talked about was that what we see in nature, in life in general, is we can see it right here in our own lives, in our political, and especially with Republicans, Democrats, Libertarians, Independents, whatever group you're talking about. It's surprising physics plays a part, just like calculus, math. And I think that it's important that we look at those together. And what I talked about, what we're talking about today is, the fact is that what we're seeing happening is people are watching on news and seeing it. They're getting frustrated and they're getting angry. And that anger is the gusts. And what happens is that they're seeing city blocks of our cities burning down or boarded up. Look at Albuquerque, downtown Central. We're here on downtown Central, and we've got boarded up, businesses. But the city's directed them to take down the boards, but there's no businesses there. Why? Once a business is boarded up, it's difficult to bring them back. Our elected officials, homes and families are being attacked. And we see that. We see the frustration, and people get angry. And individuals that are appointed to federal positions are being attacked personally and professionally. What are we hearing? God, there was an editorial in Forbes magazine saying that those individuals that were in the Trump administration should never have an opportunity to work ever again. That's unbelievable. And then individuals prosecuted and persecuted. Well, I guess I should say is that we see those violent protests. And what happens? That they're arrested and they're released and they're right back out burning more city blocks down. Unequal treatment by law enforcement. It's not a one-way street here. It's not just conservatives over here being blindsided. That's not happening. What we're talking about is unequal treatment. I worked with a gentleman, Ray, and he drove a beat-up old truck, and he was a carpenter for us, and he was doing better than I was. And he had a nicer house. He had several rental homes. And here he was up in his beat-up truck taking care of his rental homes and got stopped by the police. What are you doing in my neighborhood? Not in our neighborhood, this neighborhood. You're somewhere where you don't belong. Unequal, and then disrespect of life. I don't believe that if a woman chooses for an abortion and instead of the infant dying, the infant is born alive, that we kill it. That to me is you can't, that is disrespecting life. And we have that going on, disrespecting minorities. But not just what we're talking about is whether you're American of European descent or American of South American descent or Central American descent, or whether you're American of African descent or American of Asian descent. That you're not looked upon different or special or anything else. You're looked upon first as an American. But also it comes down to the point of view. I can't believe, I get somehow, whatever reason, I signed up for it, Nextdoor, some website about your neighborhood. And somebody posted, oh my gosh, we've got things going on and people, and we got to be careful. And my wife chewed me out on this one. She goes, why did you have to post that? And I posted, I said, I saw an individual walking in our neighborhood with a red hat, and I immediately called the security, company to go check it out, check him out. And my wife wanted, but again, it amazes me that this is what's contributing to this oscillation. And then it's silencing dissent vote, voices, getting even and settling scores. But I tell you what, it doesn't have to be that way. It starts with all of us. And how do we do it? It's really pretty simple. I text a relative and wished her happy birthday. I text her because she said it's just too challenging to talk to me or any of her siblings. And so I text her, and the response I got back was, I can't talk. Hopefully after the elections are all done, I can talk to you. Now, I'm thinking, I said, why should whoever's president mean I can or cannot talk to my relative? My wife's brother lives in Prague, and he has different political views than we do. And he texts back Marion and said, thank you for the stimulating conversation. I really appreciate it. That's how we do it. It's also, how do we tamp this down? And again, I want to make it clear that when we look at physics, we look at engineering, how do they stop that oscillation? The way they do it is, like in high rises, they put a pendulum up there, so when the wind pushes the building at the top one way, the weight goes the other way to steady the structure, so it doesn't have to be so rigid. And that's what we don't want a rigid society. So we need comedians that are willing, and we allow comedians to poke fun at our most sacred things. They've always done that. We need to call out Hollywood when they're propagandizing. For you that don't, and I recall reading about this 20 years ago, Chevy Chase was quoted in an article that when he was on Saturday Night Live, he did a skit to make Gerald Ford look like a buffoon when he was president, before he was running for re-election. And he said the sole purpose of that skit was to get people to get turned off by Gerald Ford and turn to the Democrat, Jimmy Carter. If they're going to do it, they need to make it front and clear this is a political skit. We need to make sure that we understand that our political opponents, people that have different views than us, are not our enemies. We need to hold political leaders accountable for their actions. And also at the same time, and what I mean by that too is that our political leaders hold accountable their own members of their party. And what we're seeing today is that that's not happening. And we need to break the heavy hand of government. Because I want to make it clear, I've been on the receiving end of that heavy hand. When Bill Richardson was governor, and I heard that they were going to make a union-only agreement for the construction of the addition to UNM Hospital, I heard about it. I got with my contracting association, Associated Builders and Contractors, we went to the Board of Regents, we stood up and said, all New Mexicans deserve a right to work on this project, whether you're a member of a union or not. 2 weeks later, I had state of OSHA on my construction sites. That's what we talk about, the heavy hand of government. That's what we're talking about. But if all of us stand up, all of us, you stand up, we can be heard and we can't be broken. But man, you do it one at a time, we're lost. So thank you for tuning in. Look forward to the next segment. Thank you very much.
Played over to Madrid, plays it across the box off the dasher. It's settled. Shot on by Garcia. Trickles in, goal.
Chavez blocked at the rim. And here's Dorian Lewis to Watson.
Shot on and just wide. Big deflection. Goal.
With his first field goal. Look at that. That's gorgeous.
Not a game you can go have 25 turnovers in and win.
Get that out of here, Watson says. Here comes Hodnett all the way. He's blocked in return. Dickey, did he get it off? He did, and he hit it. They're really... Oliveras. Wild three, and it hit.
Another steal nearly by Giron. It is a steal. Avalos ahead to Giron. The two-hand hammer by Giron. I knew he was going to put that one down.
ProView Networks tonight.
District mashup there.
Davidson took it away in transition. Might be time for a jam. Yes.
Oh! Nick Barton, watch him, coach. Watch the inbounder.
Dumas Sanchez in the corner.
Back to Barton with 2.4 seconds left. Fires for the win.
And he got it!
It's good.
Oh my God!
On the last second shot.
He did! Oh my God!
Bakes it in from 25 feet and watch the celebration right in front of us. What a shot by Barton. He was double teamed and somehow found a way to get it in. Ramos to Gaxiola, high window for the win. It's good. It counts. Gaxiola with the game winner for a Driscoll Heritage.
Hey, welcome back. In this segment, and I want to talk about the Bill of Rights. I can't believe that I'm doing this. This is like U.S. Government 101 in high school. I understand they don't teach that in high school anymore, from what I gathered. One of the things that I thought was quite remarkable when I was running for office as I traveled the state, my good friend Tina Kincaid down in Carlsbad, I sat down with her and she quizzed me on the Constitution, she quizzed me on the Bill of Rights, and I believe this is the pamphlet that Tina gave me on the Constitution. And Since then, I've always carried a copy of the Constitution. I also had another individual hand this to me about Citizens Rule Book, Bill of Rights Jury Handbook. And today, I can't believe that we're having to go back here and think that we need to understand what the Bill of Rights are, what it means. I think also it comes into how important it is that we understand that the Constitution isn't a living document, because if it was a living, breathing document, which I've heard some people say, is that today it lives and expresses itself, is that we're going to bury my political opponents. That's what is so great about our Constitution, about the Bill of Rights. Just so you understand, is that we had the Declaration of Independence, had the Constitution, and then the Europeans, our good friends in Europe, pointed out that that our founding fathers forgot the citizens' rights, our civil rights, and then they came back and said, "Oh man, let's do something." So it's very clear to me, and I hope to all of you, that they weren't infallible. And then when they realized that a mistake was made, they worked to correct it. We talk about how the founding fathers didn't stop slavery right then and there. But we came back, almost 100 years later to rectify that. And in rectifying that cost, 700,000 American lives to end slavery. So all men and women were equal under the rule of law. Some discussions is that true today? Is that really open? Are we really? But again, when we look at the law, it is in the eyes of liberty. We're all equal, and I firmly believe that. But I want to talk about the Bill of Rights, and so for those of you that don't know about the Bill of Rights, we're going to do it real quick and dirty. The First Amendment provides several right protections: speech, press, assembly, protest, and religion. Second Amendment, which you hear loud and clear from folks, is the right to bear and keep arms. The Third Amendment is not to allow the government to have soldiers live in our homes, force us to house soldiers. Fourth Amendment is unreasonable search and seizure. Fifth Amendment is to protect, people accused of crimes. Grand jury, double jeopardy, just compensation, due process. The Sixth Amendment, speedy and public trial, trial by an impartial jury. Seventh Amendment extends the jury trial. Eighth Amendment. Now here's one that's now propping up: excessive bail, fines, and cruel and unusual punishments. Now let's think about this. The governor has enacted regulations, not law. These aren't laws, these are regulations. And she said, next time I'm bringing a hammer. And she made it clear to everybody in this state, you stand up to me, I got a hammer big enough to drive you into the ground. She went after the folks, in Grants, that stood up to her shutting down. My wife, Marion, was reading the paper, and she says, my gosh, look at this. They find a parts supplier in Santa Fe almost $79,000. $5,000 here, taking away individuals' ability to make a living, taking away their liquor licenses, taking away their license for their restaurants. The Ninth Amendment means is that we have other rights that aren't spelled out in the Constitution. So if they're spelled out and they belong to somebody else, then so be it. But if they're not spelled out, they're ours. 10th Amendment says that the federal government only has the powers delegated in the Constitution. If not, it belongs to the state or the people. I think it's critical. It is critical what we have going on right now. I think it's important to exercise your rights. So the question comes up is, and I want to share with our listeners because it amazes me that I'm up here. I am a father of 4. I have kids that are professionals. I've run for office. I have my business. I do these things, and I'm up here in front of the camera making my positions very clear that may not be popular across the state, but I do it and thinking that it's important that I do it. And I'm thinking that other people look at it too. And that's not the case. I spent probably a week trying to get a guest to come on here and been talking for weeks to get a guest to come on the program to talk about civil liberties. I even reached out to some groups that have been aggrieved. Believe it or not, they don't want to come on board. I mean, think about this. There's an association out there that is for those individuals that had ancestors that were put in internment camps here in New Mexico. For those that don't know, New Mexico had the largest Japanese internment camps in the country. That's right here in our state. We don't talk about it, we don't hear about it. And those individuals are now being discriminated, and they have a case, I believe, going before the Supreme Court over being discriminated against in their chances to going to college, to getting into Harvard or the Ivy League schools. This is what's going on. And so here it is, I'm stepping up and saying, enough is, as Barack Obama said, and as my dad said, enough is enough. We got to stand up. Last night I took a break. I watched a Chinese movie, English subtitles, and what was really remarkable was that a group of individuals stood up against the dictator. This was back in the 1600s of China. And they weren't able to take the yoke off of this leader until the peasants came together and all of them took the yoke off. And that's what it takes. Now, I want to make it clear that when I reached out to attorneys, I reached out to the ACLU with no response. I reached out to another organization that was recommended to me by another group. I reached out to them, National, no word from them. I've reached out to a number of Republican attorneys that are leaders in the Republican Party, and no response. They don't want to come on. I get it. I talked about what I went through with the Board of Regents at UNM and Bill Richardson coming after me and my company. When I ran for the U.S. Senate, I faced the same situations. I had companies that came after me because I was running for office, came after my company. I get it. And people see me and they go, if I do what Mick Rich did, they're going to come after me, they're going to come after my family. My family and I had long conversations about how to take care of ourselves, how to make sure that things didn't happen to us. Always looked over our shoulder. We did those type of things. Why? Because we know what it's like out there. But guess what? When we all stand up as one, unified, they can't pick us off one at a time. That's what it's about. If you think about trees in a forest, the reason many forests are able to stand is that the trees are close together to protect each other from the high winds. But if there's an opening, there's a break, then the wind gets to them, can knock them down. This is what's happening. This is what's happening in our country, and we're seeing it. And it's going to be up to all of us to stand up, and especially for the people that you don't agree with. Now, when I was in high school, so I'm dating myself. I'm an old guy. I get that. I'm not supposed to say that either. I'm a young buck. But So here it is. 18-year-olds can now vote. I'm sitting there filling out my sample ballot. My father walks in and looks at my sample ballot and says, "Are you voting for Ronald Dellums?" This is out in California. He represented Oakland. You know, this was, and I said, "Yeah, I'm voting for Ronald Dellums." And he said, "You better not." I said, "Yeah, I am." He said, "You better not." So I let it go. Elections, the polls closed. We're sitting down at dinner. I'd voted. My dad said, "Who'd you vote for?" I said, "It's none of your business. I don't have to tell anybody who I voted for." And he said a few words that I'm not going to repeat on air, but he basically said, "By God, you better tell me." I said, "Okay, I voted for Ronald Dellums." He said, "You just lost driving privileges." And as an 18-year-old living at home still, I was graduating in a few months. This is in the primaries. I lost driving privileges for a while. You know, I believe how important it is to vote, no matter what the consequences are. I think it's important to vote my conscience. I think it's important to vote for the best person that I believe for my country and my community and my state. Those things are huge. That's why I ran for office. That's why I'm here on air reaching out to you. These things are huge. Tears me up what I'm seeing going through in our country, and what tears me up the most is what's going on in Capitol Hill, is that our leaders in Washington are not tamping it down. They're only creating a bigger and bigger gust. And they're thinking, and get this right, they're thinking, it isn't a matter of winning an election, it's about destroying the opposition. Liz Cheney, maybe she forgot that all of us stood up and said it's not right to prosecute and persecute her dad for war crimes. We all stood behind her dad. We all stood behind Mitt Romney. And where are they? They're off there not thinking about the importance of supporting the dissenting voice. That's the true minority in our state. Because once we overwhelm the minority voice, we're lost. We're going to be no different than China, no different than communist Russia. Those are the things that we see, and I don't want to live in China. I don't want to live in Russia. I want to live as a free individual, a free person, with the civil liberties that I was born with, the same civil liberties that all of us were born with if you were born here in the United States. If you've come from a different country and you've lived under a dictatorship, you know the direction that some of the people in our country are taking us. It's not right. And it's up to us to all stand together. Because together we can turn it around. We can tampen it down. I posted at the end on this website for my neighborhood, and I came back and I said how important it is to reach out to other people. I said, Americans are welcoming people, and they are. People are understanding and compassionate. We give more per person in our country than any individuals across the world, and we do that. I said, when I walk across the street and extend a hand, I'm always met with another extended hand. When I bend down to listen, tell you what, I can learn so much when I'm listening versus when I'm shouting. And my kids point out to me sometimes that I raise my voice way too much. But I want to thank all of you for tuning in to this session, because together we're going to make a difference. And it starts with each one of us. Thank you very much, and appreciate you tuning in and listening to what I have to say. Thank you very much.
Think the winning team here tonight be the last 6A team in the playoffs. It's picked off. Nothing but green in front. Touchdown, Monsanto.
Date. Hope it warms up a little.
Roland looking, he's got some daylight in front of him at the 10, the 5. He's going to go into the end zone for the touchdown.
Get extra yards like that. That's Isaac Chavez in motion. Pavia fires down the middle, and it's Rodriguez to the 5, and he's in. Touchdown.
Throwing it in the end zone. Ball is caught. Touchdown, Cowboys. Back to Joseph, look out! And he's gone. Forget about it. LaShawn Joseph with a house call. Touchdown, Sandia.
The winner gets to take with them, or in Western's case, keep it here. Zell Price will return. Catches it on the goal line. Price has got a little crease. One man to beat. Price might be gone. Price is in the open field and will score on a 98-yard kickoff return. Is Zell Price at Eastern New Mexico 32-yard line. Fowler in the gun. Pump fake to Colson. He's got him open. Colson with the move at the 10. He'll go in for the touchdown. 32-yard touchdown pass.
Malik comes out wide to the left this time on 2nd down and 10. They're going to throw it out to him. Up the sideline he goes. Malik is off to the races. Ain't nobody going to catch him. It's 6-0 the Clovis Wildcats. Been a touchdown, but in any event, it's 4th and 10. Rolling, looking, throws it out. Incomplete. Ball will go over on downs with 1:11 to go, and for the first time this year, New Mexico Highlands will be in the victory position, victory kneel down position.
And look at this shot out of a cannon. All the way is Gallegos for his 3rd touchdown tonight.
Welcome back. Last segment, we talked about the Bill of Rights, how important it is to stand up for our civil rights, but also when we do that, we're standing up for our neighbors' civil rights. Those things are huge. I want to talk today a little bit about what's going on, and to me, this is concerning. Freedom of speech. What we saw was this past week is that Twitter, YouTube, a number of organizations have banished our president, Donald Trump. What I found remarkable was that some of these companies like Twitter, YouTube, Google, Facebook, a lot of them will preach, and maybe preaching isn't right, but maybe they'll go overseas and talk about how important it is to have a free press, to allow open dialogue. But they squash it here. And then they squash it in China because because there's big bucks to be made in China. So they'll shut down the dissenting voice in China because that's worth some money. And really what they're talking about here is they're shutting it down here for bucks too, because they know where the money comes from. And it's going to be coming from the Biden administration. We should break up the high tech. We should break up and not allow them not to get sued over content, because I tell you what they're doing right now is they're shutting down voices. So here it is. I'm looking, I said, man, they're shutting down the president from Facebook. They're shutting him down from Twitter. They're shutting him down from YouTube, an assortment of different things. And I started looking at it. Well, actually, a month ago, I started looking at what about when I write letters to the editors, I write editorial pieces, I write blogs, where am I going to post them? Because Facebook is going to probably shut it down. And I started looking at it and realizing that it's not just Mick Rich. It's not just a Mick Rich issue. It's a you issue. And I said, okay, so we opened account at Substack, and gosh willing, I gotta get some business behind me so I can have additional time to start writing my editorials, writing editorial pieces, blogs, and I'm going to be posting them on Substack. Why? Because this is a venue, a medium that is saying that it's okay, my voices will be heard, that other people can listen to me, but also I can listen to them, read what they have to say. And we're going to be posting. And I'm thinking that we're going to eventually take this program, make a podcast, and post it to Substack, because I think it's important to get the message out there. What amazed me was that Mark Levine, and I can't remember who the other one was, Dan, that he appears on Fox on occasion, both of them were warned what they could say or not say on their radio program. This should be concerning to all of us. If they can freeze out the president, they can freeze out you and me. Now, Parler, I said, okay, so I'm going to switch over to Parler. Not like I'm some sort of big media guy. I'm not a Rush Limbaugh. I'm not a Stephen Colbert. I'm just Mick Rich, just like you. Like you. I got a voice. You know, I want to get it out there. And I'm saying, okay, I'm going to go to Parler. So I go, okay, I'm going to go to Apple. I'm going to go to my app store, and I'm going to get the Parler app. And I couldn't get it on my iPhone. And I go, no, what? I can't. So I said, okay, I'll switch over, and then I will get my iPad. I couldn't get that Parler app on my iPad. I couldn't complete that. So then I said, okay, I'll go to my laptop, which isn't a Apple product. And then I tried to go to Google. That didn't work. So then I went to, and how do people come up with these names? DuckDuckGo. But I went to DuckDuckGo. I made that my search engine, and I was able to download Parler. Well, now Amazon has shut down Parler. Not only did Amazon shut it down because they host all these servers, have all these servers and host all these different programs, but all of a sudden they're doing Amazon shut that down. Amazon, Jeff Bezos owns what, Washington Post? Washington Post will only air certain articles, not others. Same thing with Time, the New York Times. You have articles that can't be written. If you're posted with the Washington, the New York Post or whatever it is, can't get covered in CNN or other coverage. And so I'm looking at this. And when I say I'm looking at this, I'm doing my research. And I'm doing it so you don't. But I'm saying that as I'm talking to you, and a lot of times, like President Trump, I think our media never got was, when President Trump got in front of the press and he's asked questions and he's responding. As he's responding, he's thinking about what's the ramification? He's thinking out loud. As I'm talking to you, I realize that in my company, we have multiple servers for our different software packages. And then now some of them are going to be, we're going to the web. I'm thinking that we need to reevaluate that, as I'm saying this online. We're going to reevaluate this and say we're not going to put this online. We're going to reconsider putting some of our software online because I don't want to take a chance of Jeff Bezos. I get to a point where I hope to be, and Jeff Bezos says, we need to pull the plug on Mick Rich, and we're going to first start going after his company. So we're going to go back and reevaluate what we have and not have on our server. That's one. And number two is I'm going to look into whether I can start posting my own podcasts, my own videos, and post them on my own server and push them out there. And I'm going to share with everybody next week. I'm going to do the research on this. I'm going to reach out to my IT people. I'm going to reach out to Computer Solutions. I hope that it's okay with those guys for me to mention their name, but I'm going to reach out to Computer Solutions. I'm going to talk to my IT guy, Nathan James. I'm going to talk to him. I'm going to talk to the guys here and talk about how do I go about doing this? How do I make this work? How does it going to look? Because I want to make sure that Jeff Bezos or these other characters can't shut me up. I want to make it clear that people had learned a long time ago that you can't shut me up. My wife and my kids know that. God, they know that. They go, oh man, here comes Dad, look out. And I've paid a huge price for that. I shared this with a buddy the other day. I said, here it was, I did a school project. This was several decades ago. But I ended up in litigation. And it was a mess. It wasn't a big deal, but it was a mess. It was taking my time. And here it is, it's a small rural school. I'm up on the roof doing the final inspection, and the school board member looks at me, everybody walks away, it's just the two of us, we're up on the roof. My wife says she hates me telling this story, but we're up on the roof, we're right at the edge, right on the edge, right, a couple feet off. Everybody walks away, and it's just the two of us. And he said, you do realize that had you bought the roofing material from me, you wouldn't have had the problems you got today. I'm a fun guy, I have a good time. Don't mess with me. I was so upset and angry at that time, and I can remember I looked over my shoulder to see where everybody's at, and they're all at the other end looking at something else on the roof, and they're all looking down. There's nobody around. It's just the two of us at the edge of the roof, and I thought to myself, do I push this SOB off the roof? Because this isn't right. This is what goes on in our state. This is what goes on. And I know people will pay people off. I don't. And I looked at him and I just walked away, shook my head, and I walked away. And I called my attorney, and I spent more money on attorney's fees to fight that sucker than it would have cost me to pay it off. And I faced this my whole life. I have stood up for what's right. I did it starting at 18. I did it when I was a little kid. I taught my kids to be that way, that we stand up for right. When we're wrong, we make it right. But when we're right, we stand up for it. Tell you what is painful at times, very painful at times. But I'm going to do it for you and for me and for my kids, because I want people to know that we stand up for what's right. I'm Mick Rich. Thanks for tuning in. I'm looking for the last segment. Thank you.
Well, I'm going to the frontier, walk up to the cashier, order up a root beer and a number one. Cover it with green stuff, one scoop is not enough. Find a booth is real tough, back by the Duke. Meet my family, meet my friends in the quirkiest restaurant I have ever been. All of Albuquerque's favorite spot, it's the Frontier Restaurant.
The Frontier Restaurant is a proud supporter of ProView Sports Network. Don't sacrifice quality and flavor when you're in a hurry. Golden Pride offers ribs, fried chicken, green and red chili, breakfast burritos, and Frontier Cinnabons. 4 great locations, or visit us online at goldenpride@abq.com. Golden Pride Barbecue Chicken and Ribs, proud supporter of ProView Sports Network. The New Mexico High School Coaches Association, established in 1941, is an organization of New Mexico's best and most professional interscholastic coaches. Coaches across work daily to help our student athletes excel in the classroom, on the field of play, and in our communities. Students that participate in interscholastic activities attain higher grades, higher graduation rates, and higher wages. Responsible for the North-South All-Star Games, statewide Coaches Award Program, and providing multiple professional development opportunities for New Mexico's coaches. Be a great coach by coaching beyond the game.
Hey, I'm Mick Rich. Welcome back. I just want to do a real recap of the first 3 segments, but it comes down to segment 1 is that we see our country pulling apart. And I'm a member of Rotary, and one of the things that they talk about is they have a 4-way test, and I'm not good remembering 1, 2, 3, 4. But what really brings it together, it comes together, and that is it's about bringing people together, not pushing them apart. When I ran for office, I thought about it long and hard. It's about bringing people together. I didn't try to demonize anybody. It was hard on occasion, but I worked not to do that. That's number 1. Number 2 is we talked about our civil rights and how important they are. That either we exercise our civil rights, and we stand up for our rights, but our neighbors' rights, and for those that we don't agree with, or for those that don't have a voice, or for those that are too shy to stand up. In my business, when we have business meetings, we have introverts and we have extroverts. And I make a real point that the extroverts are, always raising their hand. But I make a point to ask the introverts what's on their mind. And we need to do the same thing. We need to ask those people that aren't saying anything, what's on your mind? And I make a real point of doing that. So it's about exercising our right. But this last segment, I want to talk about New Mexico. I want to talk about rural New Mexico and urban New Mexico, because when I traveled the state for 3 years, and my business has taken me all over the state for almost 40 years. I got to see firsthand and talk to people across the state about what's important. What do they see? What direction they're going in? What their aspirations are. And when you're building the communities, you get to see firsthand what their aspirations are. And it's huge. It's real grateful down in Socorro, Magdalena. There we built a shop, building for their shop program. So the young men and women that are working ranchers. You know, I understand they're not ranchers, they're cattle growers and wool growers, right? I learned that one here recently. But that they have a place to go practice the skills on welding in those type of vocational type training. Here we talk about the film, you know, some schools have film programs, some have different creative programs. But you get an idea of what's going on. And as you can see behind me is a map of the state. But what's really quite remarkable to me is that New Mexico is split like the country. You have Santa Fe, Albuquerque, and Las Cruces, those three metropolitan areas that have a bulk of the population of our state. And we're like a state with two separate people. And what's really remarkable to me, if you look down at southeast New Mexico, what you see is that small population, very little population compared to Santa Fe, Albuquerque, and Las Cruces. But they generate almost 40–45% of the state revenue. So what happens is those individuals down there bring a huge amount of wealth into the state, but their needs aren't met because they don't have their voice is so small in Santa Fe. The values in rural New Mexico are very different than the values in those three areas. It's hard to imagine that people would consider Las Cruces or Santa Fe metropolitan areas. But when we look at New Mexico as a whole, those three areas comprise such a bulk of the population that they dictate what goes on. Think about it. So here it is, southeast New Mexico contributes 40–45% of the budget for the state. And what did Bill Richardson and his administration and his supporters do? We ended up with the rail runner. We just spent another $50 million upgrading the, this is the part that I can't, you can't, this is like an issue that reality is crazier than fiction, is that we spent $50 million putting in controls so there isn't a collision between trains, you know, between the rail runner. And to give you an idea, I believe it's just one train goes up and one train goes back and one goes back and forth, one train. It's not like they can run into each other. But we spent $50 million to make sure, and also I just want to make it very clear that the train isn't so long that the front of the train can loop and hit the tail end of the train. The train isn't like 150 miles long. It's only, 100, 200 feet long. So it's not like there can be a collision, but we spent $50 million to make our money, $50 million of our money to make sure. The people down in southeast New Mexico are saying we're contributing 45%, and we, in our roads, we have as many people dying on the roads due to heavy truck traffic. Well, not quite as many that are killed on the streets of Albuquerque. But this is what's happening. We've got this political. Then the other item is that rural New Mexico, as I come across, and I chatted with two ladies, a grandmother and a mother from Gallup. And I was at the state fair, I was talking to them, and we were talking about sanctity of life, and I talked about it, and I mentioned about how my opponent supported abortion up to the point of delivery. And she said, oh no. Well, she's from Gallup area. They were members of the Navajo Nation, and they believe in the sanctity of life. Now, they may be Democrats, but they believe in the sanctity of life. Those views are very different in urban New Mexico than they are in rural New Mexico, but their voices are not heard. whether they're Democrat or Republican. So when we talk about the importance of listening to the dissenting, the minority voice may be a Navajo or it may be a conservative. But when it talks about the sanctity of life, it's about listening. I believe that there was a poll that 80% of New Mexicans oppose late-term abortions, or 75, in that range. Overwhelming. But our state still allows it. Why is it? Why is it that that voice? And it's because those three metropolitan areas drive the agenda. This isn't good for our state. This is that push-pull when I traveled the state. But also at the same time, I just want to make it clear. I said earlier about how I couldn't get Republican attorneys to come on board, Republican attorneys that are leaders, Republicans that are leaders in the Republican Party to come on this program to talk about civil rights. Well, guess what? I can't get New Mexico Oil and Gas Association to come on this program. I never could get them to come on my radio program. I couldn't get the Independent Petroleum Association member, spokesperson, to come on this program. Why is it? Why is it that they're down in southeast New Mexico and they're saying, I don't have a voice, what's important to us isn't being heard, and they're not willing to come on board? It is up to us to raise our voice. This is what was remarkable to me I'm thinking 5 years ago, I'm at a Border Patrol meeting down in Deming. And the leader from the, not the leader, but the individual working with a congressman from southern New Mexico, he told everybody that would complain, that had concerns about the border, said, well, what you need to do is to have a protest and raise your voice so you can be heard in Washington. And I'm thinking, that is why we have elected officials. So we don't have to protest. We don't have to go to Washington to make our voice heard. And what happened? We're seeing that. We're seeing it in Minneapolis, that people are protesting to be heard. So we need to be heard. You need to be heard. You need to stand up and make your beliefs, your positions heard. And I'd like to hear from you. So contact me. Thank you very much. I'm Mick Rich, and this is To The Point.